Game collecting. Chances are you, the viewer, collect games. I don't know which ones you collect, but you probably collect them. I mean, there are tens of thousands of games to choose from different genres and even different generations. So while some people would want to have a complete set of every single system, most are content with having just games that they enjoy. There's no wrong way to collect, even if you grade them. I don't have an issue with people grading games. If you want to do that, fine. Who am I to yuck your yum? But there's a lot of people who don't like grading games, and recently I've encountered people who grade games and they don't like that there are people out there that don't like grading games. So I figured I'd add my 2 cents to the conversation. In addition to Twitter, I like to hang out on Reddit. I usually browse r/all, but I am subscribed to a handful of subreddits, specifically r game collecting. Game collecting is a pretty self-explanatory subreddit. It's a place where people post pictures of their game collections and game pickups. Since it's Reddit, over time a community has developed and there are clear indications of what is acceptable and what's not. I've been participating in the subreddit for 8 years now, and there are like 3 things that the subreddit has consistently been hostile to over that time. Flippers, people who pay full market value and brag about it, and people who pay for graded games. And God help your soul if you're a person who bought a graded game for full market value and are bragging about your intent to flip it. The most recent debate in the subreddit involving graded games has been happening since Carl Jobs addressed the WATA grading issue. About 2 to 3 months ago, Carl Jobs had actually addressed a takedown video by Mad Dog, and there were a bit of an influx of posts sharing graded games, including some of Carl's, because apparently Carl's a hypocrite for having graded games. And this isn't the first time that graded games have been shared on the subreddit. Some posts even get upvotes, like this one, the Mario Kart 8 Collector's Edition, got like 400 upvotes, which is good for that subreddit. And the post is mostly filled with people focusing on why they think grading is bad, but upvoted posts like that are the exception to the rule. Most of the posts are of very common games that are graded, and they're heavily downvoted, filled with comments clowning on the original poster. Also, any time that the OP tries to defend it in a snarky way, they're met with downvotes. This isn't specific to the subreddit, it's how Reddit works in general. Conformity gets you upvotes. The post that got me to make this video was this meme that was shared. It's a SpongeBob meme where the robot tries to convince Patrick that it's his wallet. It paints the game collecting subreddit as these ignorant people who care about condition but yet say that games are meant to be played. It's a great straw man meme, but that's besides the point. This post was obviously met with criticism and I chimed in. I'm not going to read my whole post, but I mainly took issue with the notion that game collectors apparently are just ignorant of the aspect of grading, that they haven't come around to it yet. This fact that it's in a meme format doesn't really help the conversation either. We've heard of grading games. It's a practice that's been around for at least 15 years in the game collecting scene, and we get why people grade. It's just not a thing that most people, myself included, care to participate in. Like I said, I don't mind if you grade your games. It's your money. You can do whatever you want with it. I've shared a lot of things on the subreddit and this channel which a lot of people would go, why would you spend money on that? So I get it. But a lot of graders, specifically those who comment on a collecting forum, seem to not really get the aversion to grading. After all, it's a game collecting forum, not a game playing forum. So allow me to explain. Most game collectors, specifically the ones that exist on that subreddit, believe that the emergence of WATA grading and the subsequent high dollar price sales from heritage auctions has led to the rising cost of video games overall, especially in the past 2 years. I am working on a future video to elaborate on that, but it is what a lot of game collectors believe, which is why when people post their graded games, it's met with hostility because they believe that they're doing it specifically because of the value and looking to turn a $60 game into a $5,000 game simply by putting it in a box. I know that it's a little bit ironic for me to say that, considering that I have a whole series called Retronomics which focuses on price trends in video games. However, I think it's important to reiterate that when I collect games, I don't buy something because of its potential dollar value, and that's not the point of the series. I need to be aware of what things are going for. Have you ever bought something at a game store or a game convention and then get back home and look it up and realize that you overpaid by like a lot? That sucks. And that's why I make the videos to forecast on whether the price will go up, down, or stay the same, so the person viewing can decide what to buy now or if they need to wait. Grading to me as a game collector seems to be primarily about the money and not much else. When I chimed in on that Reddit post, I got a response from the OP who seemed to be pretty defensive of collecting graded games and told me that it was ironic that I would consider graded games like the ultra rare Nintendo World Championship cartridge. When I asked why it was ironic, someone else chimed in and confirmed everything that I had assumed about people who collect graded games. This person said that they collect graded games because they're very competitive in collecting. In addition to having complete copies of their favorite game, they also have a sealed graded copy, and it's a drive to get something that no one else has. It's one thing to own a Nintendo PlayStation prototype or even a copy of Stadium Events, but what if it was the only 9.6 A++ graded game of Call of Duty with the misspelling on the front? No one would have that specific combination of variation. Speaking of which, let's take a moment and talk about what the meme doesn't address and what the OP mentions in other threads. Variants. Now, I have a handful of variants in my collection. For example, I own multiple versions of Night Trap, multiple versions of Mortal Kombat 2, multiple versions of Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, and multiple versions of The Wizard starring Fred Savage. I'm sure that I have other variants as well. But I don't go out of my way to collect variants of the same game on the same platform. I made an exception for Legend of Zelda for the NES. I got a gold cart and then I have a gray cart. And at one point I had a 5 screw and I sold it to John Riggs, and I didn't really pay attention to that variant until I sold it. And I never did get the gray cart of Zelda 2 either. I do not care if my copy of a game is a first print or not unless the game differs in a way, like Ocarina of Time for example. And you know what? You can't experience the difference when you grade a game because it's sealed up tight. You can't play it anymore. Grading puts an extensive emphasis on outward cosmetic condition. Does the box have corners that are dinged? Is that a round oval first print that was made in Canada? I don't know if that's a true variant or not, and I don't really feel like looking it up. But okay, fine. I did look up some variants of Ocarina of Time, but not to verify the variations that you care about. I pulled up a collector's edition and a later version. They're both graded by WATA, and it doesn't say what version of the game is on the case. It doesn't even mention that one is a collector's edition with a gold cart versus a gray cart. It's just stats on who produced the game and a little fun fact about how the game sold. I mean, like, this is my issue. That's why I don't grade my games. While I care about condition, when I buy things, I don't really care whether or not it's a 9.6 or a 9.8, or if it has an H seal or a V seal, and I don't care if it has a newer Nintendo seal of quality. That's not really what I look for when I buy my games, especially the older ones. If a manual has some creases in it, I actually prefer that one because it means that it's been used and I can use it too. I try to avoid buying sealed games or pristine copies of older games altogether, not just because I play them, but also they're cheaper. I have a whole collection of Nintendo Power issues that have seen better days as well. The issue number 1 of Nintendo Power that I acquired a while back was missing the poster, so I found a beat up one that had its poster ripped out, and then I took that poster, put it into mine, and then I sold it at cost to Art of Nintendo Power for about 18 bucks. The overall condition of this issue is pretty good for its age, and you'll notice that I have it in a frame. So while I don't grade my games, I'm not also above protecting it. And I haven't put it up on my wall yet because it is just a generic frame and I don't want it to get sun damaged. Again, it's not because of the value, it's because I'm trying to take care of my stuff. And I've broken some items because of use, and when it happens, I don't go, oh man, it's just lost all its value. I'm like, great, now I have to find a working one to use and find one to play, and now I have to spend more money. The same thing applies to rarity. I own a lot of rare things, some that people consider a staple in a collection, like Earthbound for the Super Nintendo, and I really don't care for the game, but my wife bought it for me when we were first dating, so it's special and I'm not going to get rid of it. Also, while I was writing this script, I've been trying to let the script marinate for a bit and reflect on it before I film, and I rewrote this part because when I was considering about grading, I considered that if I were to grade anything in my collection, like if I was told that I needed to grade one piece in my collection or lose it all, it would be a copy of Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo for the PlayStation 1. Not just any copy, but this particular copy. It's not sealed. It's actually the game that kickstarted my love for collecting. It used to be owned by my friend Dave, who passed away 15 years ago. The story behind it I wrote in another video that you can check out, and I would probably grade that one, but it's so important to me that I don't want to send it in the mail, and I don't even want to know the grade. So I don't think that I would even grade it at that point. And maybe I even want to open it up and flip through the manual or even play it. I mean, even though it's really important to me, I don't want it sealed away forever. And that's the rarity that I care about, the history of the game and where I got it from and stuff. And if I were to pitch that to a graded collector, like if I were to take a game like that and try to sell it to somebody who collects graded games, they wouldn't pay a premium for that kind of story. That's a priceless thing. I have some rare titles that I consider historic and not a lot of people have heard of, like this copy of Vegavox. It's the first chiptune album loaded onto an NES cartridge to be played on the NES. They didn't really make a lot of them. It was made in 2007 and they don't come up for sale for very often. Is this something that graders care about? I see mostly notable games for sale that everyone has heard of, like Zelda, Mario, Spider-Man, etc. And not even a lot of people who collect games and not grade them have also never heard of it. And also, if you do plan on buying one after watching this video and you see those two on eBay, that's not the first one, it's the first run and the 57th made. I have number 80, and I think they made like 130 of them or so. But I bought this new when it was 20 bucks. The impression that I get from graders who specifically post on Reddit seem to be really trying hard for people to just give grading a chance, like they're trying to legitimize the practice, because it adds value to the thing that they are collecting and it stands as an investment. Obviously, hashtag not all graders, but the controversy involving WATA, the collusion to influence prices in order to make headlines to further raise their brand. Remember, all of those high dollar games, those aren't just graded games, they're WATA graded games. That should be in the back of your mind every time somebody posts a meme or posts about graded games and immediately tries to correct the record on the perception of graded games. For example, remember that latest issue with Rondo of Blood made by PCE Works that was graded by WATA? Well, the OP addressed that as well, and their reasoning is that they, the collectors, had known about the reproduction for years. But the issue is that it's not a really good look when you're trying to legitimize graded games to allow a reproduction of that game be out in circulation, especially when the whole point of the meme is that grading helps certify that the game you're looking for is legitimate. This Rondo of Blood wasn't labeled as a repo by WATA. It was posted as the real deal and attempted to be sold on eBay as such. If it hasn't been obvious by now, grading doesn't matter to me. It's just another tier of collectible. I don't buy games to invest in. I can barely sell the games that I don't have room for, much less make an effort to make games a more valuable investment. It's not like I don't understand the allure of grading. I used to collect other things before I became a game collector. I collected Star Wars toys in the late 90s and early 2000s, and before that, I had a collection of baseball cards. I'm well aware of the desire to have grade and rarity play a more important role in what people add to their collection than to actually play with. Also, throughout that whole time, I did play video games, I just didn't collect them. My Star Wars collection, I enjoyed arranging in neat displays and hunting down rare variants like this mail-away spider monk that was in like 2 or 3 frames of Return of the Jedi, and I've since sold almost all of it. But when I was literally living in my parents' basement, I had a pretty elaborate setup, and in addition to all those loose figures, I had carded figures as well, just sitting in a Rubbermaid tub where they sat for 20 years until my dad finally moved out of my childhood home, and I had to decide if I really wanted to keep them or sell them, and I ended up selling them. For way less than what I paid for them, by the way. I think I sold everything for like $200 or whatever. It was a complete Power of the Force set on cards. And some things I even gave away to friends who still collect, and my other friend, his son, really got a kick out of the vehicles and the other stuff that I gave to him. Baseball cards were the same way. I sold them around the same time, and I had a set from every year since I was born until 1994 or so when the baseball strike happened. I still have the 1983 set for nostalgia reasons, but out of all that stuff, it was something that my parents had bought as an investment, and I couldn't enjoy it because the value would degrade. When I finally got around to selling them in 2019, they barely sold for $150 for 12 sets of cards. When I got into my 20s and I started collecting video games, I wanted to collect those because you could play those without worrying about the value. In fact, it's one of the few collecting spaces that I'm aware of where you can use your collectible and it won't affect the value unless some obvious damage is done with it. Almost nothing else is like that. You take an action figure out of the package and it immediately loses its value, below what you paid for retail. Baseball cards should immediately be graded because even the smallest dent or oil from your fingers can affect the value. And I don't want to live like that. It's like having a living room full of furniture that you can't sit on. Everything in my collection can be played, and over the past 2 years, prices have gotten so high that it is really starting to affect my willingness to break the seal on a game and add more things to my collection because the value has gotten so high. So I just sold off a lot of it. I'll say it one last time. I don't care how people collect or what they collect. I'm not making the rules on collecting here, but I thought it was important to tell people that if you grade games, there are a number of people like me who don't grade, and you can't force a collecting habit on a general populace. The Video Game Authority has been grading games since 2008. That's 15 years grading has had that long to reach mainstream acceptance, and I don't really think that it's gonna catch on. But don't let me stop you from grading stuff. Just stop seeking validation for your hobby and collect what you love.